Well, it is getting on toward late summer, that time of the season where there are some things in flower, but there are also some things that are starting to form their fruit. We'll maybe look at a little bit of each. We'll start with this vine that's kind of running through in here, but also climbing up in this chokecherry. And this is our native clematis, or clematis. People say clematis, it's clematis. This is Virgin's bower, Clematis virginiana, just starting to flower. Pretty little white flowers, and I think it has separate male and female plants. So the females get this fluffy little seed head that's very attractive a little later in summer, early fall, that lasts well into fall. It can be a little bit in the wrong place, a little bit unkempt and weedy. Some people, I think, consider it one of our nuisance natives that they don't want around, but in the right place, it's really great. And just beginning to flower right now. Virgin's bower. Now here's something in flower. Our common tawny, T-A-W-N-Y, tawny daylily. Not a native up here, and some people will consider it a little weedy at times. I wouldn't consider it invasive. It's not going to march into the woods and take over like forget-me-nots or Dame's rocket. Very colorful. There are hundreds of different cultivars of daylily. I've got one at home called the lemon lily, which I found out later after I'd been here a while, was also Jensen's favorite. But this is the common one you see along roadsides and fence rows called tawny or orange daylily. Here's a non-native. We're just on the west side of the East Storm, a non-native that can become invasive at times. This is creeping bellflower. We have a native bellflower too called harebell with a similar flower, but it's a much smaller, lower growing plant and much, much finer, narrower leaves. But this is a non-native one, creeping bellflower, that it's one of those that somebody might really like or think is appropriate in a garden setting, but in a native setting like the clearing, it's something we don't want. So I'll have to make a mental note to come and deal with this at some point with our volunteers. And you see this, not a ton of it, but it's round, creeping bellflower. We have two species of dogwood are common at the clearing, and here's the first one. This is roundleaf dogwood with this big fat round leaves. The most common deciduous shrub in Door County, I'm quite sure. And it's starting to develop a nice crop of fruit. Dogwood fruits have a single seed in them, and botanically those are called drupes, D-R-U-P-E-S. They're green now. They end up turning a whitish and then kind of light blue later on. And like all dogwoods, once the fruit is ripe, the songbirds take them very quickly. They don't last very long because the birds know this is something really good to eat. So this is roundleaf dogwood. Here's another native plant starting to form its fruit. This is common chokecherry with its dangling clusters of, these are actually, I think, botanically a berry, multiple seeds inside. They're green now. They'll end up turning almost black, dark blue. And this is one of those, when they're around, along with its close cousin, wild black cherry, you can use it to make jam and jelly and wine, but as a fresh fruit, it's really bitter or tart, too tart. But birds go crazy for this, and when they're in full fruit and you have a car parked anywhere nearby, you will know it pretty soon with big splatters of black bird droppings on your car. So people sometimes hate this plant because of that. But it's another great native plant for attracting songbirds, chokecherry. Here's another dogwood that's starting to form its fruit. This is pagoda dogwood. sounds oriental, but it's a native plant, or Asian I should say, with this tiered pagoda-like branching structure, wonderful architecture. But the show will soon be these developing, again, they're drupes, not berries, on dogwoods. Green now, they'll turn dark blue a little later, and they'll be taken quickly by the birds. But this dogwood in particular has, they're not that colorful now, but these berry stems are called pedicels. These berry stems will get brighter red as the season goes on, and even after the fruit is taken by birds, those give you a few weeks of color for a while in the fall and early winter. So pagoda dogwood. Here's another non-native that can be invasive, but mostly it's along roadsides. It's not going to, again, march into the woods and take over it. But this is everlasting pea, also called, people call it sweet pea, perennial, kind of not a vine, but it'll crawl up into things and flop over, and you can't pull it because it just breaks off. It's a perennial. Obviously, really beautiful flowers. It's in the pea family. Form a little green pod later on. A good example of when somebody doesn't know much about what we're doing here with invasives, they'll ask why are you pulling such a pretty plant? And my answer has always been, well, what's pretty in your yard at home and what's pretty at the clearing can be two different things. We want to favor native plants here. We don't have a lot of it, but just enough that, and it's so noticeable when it's in bloom. So here's one that we kind of keep an eye on and try to deal with it when we can. Everlasting pea. We have a large patch of big leaf or large leaf aster in here. Probably the nicest patch, or one of the nicest patches at the clearing. And it's doing what big leaf aster does. Instead of each growing point, each crown producing a flower stalk, they're just kind of sporadic throughout a patch of it. And here is one of the flower stems, 3 times higher than the foliage. Much smaller leaves along the flowering stem, and that classic aster blue flower at the top. I think of it often as a late summer, fall bloomer, but here it is. And I guess it's really still midsummer. So I always forget every year that it does flower a little earlier than I expect it to. But the real show for me has always been with big leaf aster is the foliage. It can form a beautiful ground cover like it has done here. I planted it at home in a few places, hoping that it turns into this. And I've always thought that the flowers were a bonus. Big leaf aster.